Welcome, everyone, to this edition of The Business Behind the Success. Today, we're going to be discussing the business of bridging the digital divide, and we have with us Selwyn Hollins, who is the Director of the Internal Services Department. Hey, Selwyn, how's it going?
All is well. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for asking. Thank you for joining us. I was really looking forward to doing this particular episode because I feel like this episode ties in directly what I'm trying to accomplish. But before we get into that, we want the viewers to learn a little bit more about you. I know that you have an interesting background in terms of your work history and stuff like that. So we wanted to know, where did you start off before you became the director of the Internal Services Department?
Yeah, that's interesting. I actually been working my whole life. My dad had a small business in Compton, so I've been working since I was 6 years old. And but so working with dad was not like getting a professional job. So I ended up going on to college, and I ended up getting a job initially in the entertainment industry. I always had a dream of owning a record company, and I spent a lot of time with that. So I worked sort of in Hollywood, working in the music publishing business, learning all of that, learning the contracts and all the exciting things about that. But then just wasn't paying the bills. So I ended up uh, putting in an application with the city of LA and thought I'd be there for a year. Then it was 2 years, and it was 3 years. And before you knew it, I was with city of LA for 26 years. And then I came over to the county of Los Angeles about 4 years ago. In the city of LA, I did a number of jobs, administrative primarily, starting in human resources. I worked for personnel department, water and power, airports. I worked for the Department of Transportation, finance. So I was kind of a jack of all trades. Got a lot of experience, always willing to try something new. And then I got to a point after 26 years where I wanted to try something different, jumped over to the county and just came over just to do, just keep working. But one thing led to another. And then 4 years later, I became the director of the Internal Services Department. So that's what I'm up to.
And what was your most entertaining job? Like, what was the most fun job you
Well,
had?
obviously working in the record business.
Hmm.
You hear a lot of great songs, a lot of great hits. I work for a music publishing company that was actually focused in R&B. So you get to hear a lot of hits. You hear hits that you never hear on the radio. Just learning that business and how creative it was. So that was exciting. And even to this day, in a lot of the work I do, I always find a way to add that creativity in there because it just never leaves you. But that was a lot of fun and excitement. But I would say throughout my career, there's always been something new and different, exciting. I've got to work on just a number of things. There's a couple of, I don't talk about it much, but there's a couple of Emmys that I helped to earn for a department I work for, preparing some public service announcements. And so it's still in there in the background, but the serious stuff is what you mostly know me for.
Did any of your artists go gold or platinum or anything while you were in the recording industry?
No, it's a hard business. A lot of people don't realize, but most of the overwhelming majority of the music that's made never really makes it. A lot of great material, creative stuff, but it's a hard business. And that's why, I always would tell artists and all to learn the full aspects of the business. It's more than just being in front of the microphone or on stage. You really gotta, if you're gonna survive in that business, you gotta know a lot. Me personally, I had no talents. I wasn't talented, but I was really intrigued by what went on behind the scenes. And so understanding all the different elements, the contracting, the different ways in which money is made, it was a good learning lesson. But I carried that throughout my career, just knowing how to approach things, knowing, you know, you just got to know whatever you're in to embrace it. And so it was a lot of fun, a lot of fun.
Nice, nice. So, fast forward, how did you fall into working on bridging the digital divide? How did that come about?
It was, my department in internal services, we do some of everything for the county. We're kind of the backbone. We do everything you could imagine, from maintaining facilities to IT to running power plants, fleet, mail services, uh, procurement and contracting. So we do a little bit of it all. And through that job, I got to see the extent to which we do things, dealing with a lot of corporations in the IT space, et cetera. Um, what happened for me was when COVID hit, a number of things happened during that period. We saw there were a lot of young people in underserved communities who didn't have the ability to continue their education virtually. And that was a concern. And so you see it, it just elevated what we already knew was going on. But then what really struck me was I think the turning point was after George Floyd, was murdered. What that did to me was, I had a lot of emotions because of things that I experienced growing up in my life. A lot of, hurt, pain, frustrations. And I wanted to do something. And a lot of people were talking, marching, but I wanted to use my position to do something to change things systemically. How do I help to influence change? And so I came up with this. It started with a small idea about using the resources that I have in my department to help, those who are in need. It all came to fruition. And that plus another thing hit me was when I was growing up, I always, when you grow up and you're in an area where there's limited income, you always have these fascinations about how you're going to make money, what you're going to do. And so I always had this dream that one day I'm going to grow up and I'm going to be really wealthy and I'm going to have wealthy friends. And I grew up in Compton. So we're going to come back to Compton and we're going to create these programs. We're going to teach the students how to do all this stuff and show them different things. Maybe you have accountants, you have people that do work, maybe improve the storefronts along the boulevard, all this. And I never became wealthy, but through my career, I met a lot of wealthy, influential people.
Right.
And I realized I can still do that with what I have. So it was a combination of COVID, George Floyd, and that childhood memory of wanting to do something. So I came up with a few ideas. I pitched it to the board of supervisors, and they said, "Go for it." And just one thing led to another, and it ultimately led to a program we call Delete the Divide. And that program is to empower youth, young adults, and small businesses in underserved communities that are adversely impacted by the digital divide. And we leverage all these partnerships with all these IT corporations and groups who have resources they've always had, but people didn't know how to access them. So it's pulling all of that together and creating somewhat of a buffet, a hub for people in underserved communities impacted by the digital divide can come to get training, resources, networking, academic scholarships, learn about entrepreneurship, helping small businesses get connected to the internet and being online and e-commerce, and really trying to accelerate that. There's just so much when it's an interesting thing because in technology you can't see and touch it. Right. You can see homelessness, you can see unemployment, you can see certain things, but the internet, a lot of people take it for granted. And I always question people, do you recall the last time you did not use the internet? And most people that I've run into can't. So part of what it is saying, hey, well, you may not realize this, but in Los Angeles County, there are over 365,000 households that don't have the internet.
Wow.
That is a household of 4 or more people. You have over 185,000 households that don't have a computer. Those numbers are astronomical, and they're predominantly in underserved areas where a lot of Black and brown people live. And so how can we help to change that? And that's what really got me into it, and just being passionate and being relentless and trying to find ways to make those connections.
Right. And to piggyback off of that, one of the reasons why it was important for me to do this particular episode is because I think sometimes as individuals, we can get caught up with goal chasing and chasing our own goals and things like that. And, after accomplishing some goals, I found myself thinking, what can I do that can make a difference in the lives of others? And how can I what can I do to give back? And I know that I'm someone who've always benefited from having mentors, like yourself and others who've always been able to share information with me that's contributed towards my success. And I thought to myself, wow, what if there's a way for me to kind of share that? What if there's a way for me to bring different individuals to the table, and I can take that information and share it with other individuals? And the reason why I'm really excited about this particular episode this season is because what LA County is doing directly ties into what I'm doing as well, in terms of bridging the digital divide and providing internet to households that would not otherwise have access to internet, because through the internet you share information, right? The internet makes the world a whole lot smaller. And if you can give them the ability to access the information, and then you have individuals like yourself who's willing to share how they did X, Y, and Z, now that's like an educational experience for people who didn't have to leave their home. So that's the primary reason why I'm really excited for this. I'm really excited for what LA County, with you and LA County, is doing. So, just to get a little bit more into it, have you faced any sort of challenges implementing this? And if so, what are some of the ways that you overcame some of those challenges?
Yeah, there's always challenges when you're trying to help people who may not be on the radar, the forgotten, the disenfranchised. Um, the first challenge was people questioned, well, why is your department doing this? We already have programs. We have this, we have that. And I agree. I think there's a lot of great, wonderful programs out there, but there's still gaps. When I go to my community where I grew up, there's not a lot that has changed in all these years. Okay. Why do you have to live in a community and have to leave your community to go find opportunities? And where do you go to find opportunities? Right. I would challenge anybody to show me in many of these underserved communities, where would an individual go to buy a computer? Where are the computer stores? And if you wanted to buy a computer, what do you buy? How do you know what to buy if no one in your home or on your street is into that? And so you miss out on opportunities that others are moving, advancing. I give you an example. You tell people, hey, you want a job? Well, how do you get a job these days? You have to go online to apply.
Exactly.
You don't have, I told you at the beginning, there's over 365,000 households that don't have internet. So they either have to leave their home and go somewhere, whether it's to a library or some public site, to try to get internet if they can. But that's not always easy for everyone. That's a challenge. Another challenge is, and this is when I started the program to Lead the Divide, I didn't ask for any resources. I just took it on because I know what's out there in the private sector. A lot of the programs and services are already out there, but they didn't necessarily have the connections to the community. And so what I did is said, well, you do that, and I'll fill those gaps to make sure we can connect you with the people. And didn't have to ask for any positions. I found that there were a number of companies, community-based organizations, philanthropists, academia that wanted to help. And so when you pull resources together, you can do a lot of things. We don't have to study it. We don't have to do a lot of extra work. We just have to use what already exists. But another, hurdle that I think I had to deal with was, and this is a big challenge, in many of these communities, people have been let down so much that when you come to them and say, hey, we have this for you.
Yeah.
There's a reluctance, there's a hesitancy. And I know what that's like. I know what it's like to select yourself because, well, maybe you don't have a car, you don't have a computer, or this isn't for me, or I don't know if I'm good enough, I can't compete in that. Mm-hmm. And so we really have to help people to see what's possible. Mm-hmm. So some of the programs we have, and what we found is, the community-based organizations are really key, as well as peers telling one another of what their experience is. For example, Google and Facebook each donated 500 scholarships for IT certifications to our program. An IT certification is so important because when you have an IT certification in that industry, when you apply for jobs, you complete this certification and you can apply for jobs starting at $50 to $60,000 a year.
Nice.
Okay. Now, the one thing that is important to know is that in Los Angeles County, according to US Census data, there are over 1 million households that earn less than $50,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine if you get an IT certificate and you're able to get a starting job that starts you at $50,000 a year, you can change, the generational position of your family. Now,
Absolutely.
the important thing to remember with the IT certification is you don't need any prior experience, any prior education. It's self-paced. And if you learn this, you can learn it in as little as 6 months if you even go at a slow pace.
Wow.
If you were to pay for yourself to get those certifications, you might pay hundreds of thousands of dollars. We're giving it to you for free. So imagine me coming to someone and telling them, hey, you don't need any prior experience, any prior education. Here's a course for you. And then when you complete it, you can compete for jobs and make $50,000, $60,000 a year. People are going to be a little suspect of that, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
But it's real. It's real, and people have been doing this. We're bringing what's already exists, and we're teaching career paths that are cutting edge, not hand me down. What's the next generation type of knowledge you should have? So that's an example of a challenge where you have all this. So I have 1,000 of these IT certificates. And it took a while, but we got a few young people going, and then they told friends. So now there's a few that are doing it. And, it's just that you have to have that passion and that persistence to make sure we help people. Because it's not, if we don't, just imagine, um, just imagine how far behind, like one child, one youth, one young adult can literally within a year turn their family's life around,
Mm-hmm.
put them on a path to financial wealth and prosperity. It's pretty big. And here's the thing about technology. You can be anywhere now,
Right.
And so let's say you don't have a car. You don't need a car.
Right.
I mean, it is a game changer. And that's what we want them to understand. And also you may get one of these IT certificates and decide you want to start a business yourself. Now you're empowered, and that's what it's all about, is empowerment, so that people realize it's not just having it, it's what it can do for you. And that's where it's really important. And I grew up where nothing really came into the neighborhood very often.
Mm-hmm.
And so you didn't know.
Right.
And here's the other thing. I
Right.
went to college. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, right before you say that, for those individuals who may not be aware or they don't know anyone who's participating in the program, how can they find out more about that particular program or how to apply for that IT program?
Yeah, so there's two ways. They can go to our website at deletethedivide.org,
Okay.
or they can send us an email at info@deletethedivide.org.
Okay.
It's real simple and it's free. None of this costs anyone. You just have to live in one of the areas that we consider impacted by the digital divide. But there's no cost. And
It's
that's
almost
that's
like
the
going to
beauty of it.
school. It's almost like going to school for 6 months, right? And you go to school for 6 months, and then once you finish, you can make $50,000, $60,000 a year, starting out.
Well, that's what we tell people, and it's really up to you. I mean, it is competitive, but the job market is huge in the tech field. But I was an individual who went to college, paid my way, starving student, made it through. Um, and so, but here's the thing: let's say you grow up in a community, and there's not much with technology around you, and you may have an interest in it, but will you major in that going to college?
Mm-hmm.
If you go to college. So let's say you go to college, chances are you're going to pursue something that you think is potentially going to be, have a job waiting for you when you graduate.
Right.
And what we're saying, most people don't go to college, but it doesn't mean you have to limit yourself to possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about passion and will. And once you get in, we connect you. We network with all of the major IT corporations. You get an IT certificate. And it opens the doors to hundreds of companies that are looking for that skill set.
Mhm.
And these are and that's the important part is sometimes and it's not just people think technology is programming. It's more than that. If you're a great artist, you can take computer design courses, or you like to be in charge. You can be a project manager. You don't have to be a programmer to be in that field. It's a wide range, and that's what we want people to understand. Technology is in everything we do,
Right.
and the power is within you, and you have the talent, and the demand is there, and it pays very well.
Absolutely.
So those are things that we try to make sure that we take time. We've had some really go-getters out there. We have cohorts. We've already formed agreements with several schools and community groups. And we started Delete the Divide back in June of last year, June of 2021. And already we have a lot of traction. And that's during COVID when you really couldn't reach people. But
Mm-hmm.
now we have that. And on top of that, we're about to launch a new internship program where we're going to hire 200 youth and young adults, ages 16 to 24. We're going to pay them $18 and $20 an hour. $18 an hour is for everybody, unless you have an IT certificate, which we offer at no cost. As soon as you get an IT certificate, we pay you $20 an hour. You will work with the county as well as with private companies, private IT corporations. So you get a full experience of the differences in that. You will work on cohort projects where the skills you learn, you'll be able to use. We're going to have you work with small businesses, schools, community groups to do work for them in the technology field. So that way you get that experience. It can be as simple as developing websites. We're going to take you, teach you, and then have you do stuff in your own community, right? It may be developing apps, whatever it is, we're going to have cohorts so that you do stuff in your own community. And we're going to have field trips, networking, and we'll provide you with the device, um, of your choice. So it's a lot.
An
It's
Apple,
not just going to get a summer
iPhone,
job.
or iPad. Earlier you mentioned over 300,000 households, still do not have internet access. How did you go about selecting which areas would receive internet access and which ones would not? Or
So
not
we
necessarily
have a
will not, but would receive it free of cost.
Yeah, so we have really sophisticated mapping analytics technology. So what we do is we look at census tracts. So we looked at census, there are people throughout Los Angeles County that don't have internet access. Where we focus are on areas where at least 20% or more of the households don't have internet access. So we've highlighted those areas, and just among those areas is about 150,000 households.
Hmm.
One of the other things that the Board of Supervisors approved for us in November of last year, 2021, was what we call investments to accelerate digital equity. And it's a multi-phased approach where we look at different ways to get people access to the internet, everything from subsidy programs that exist to offset their costs for computers and internet access, to all the way to one of the things we're about to launch is community wireless networks. So we're finalizing it now. We did a lot of research. We put out a proposal to establish public-private partnerships to provide free or extremely low-cost internet access to these homes.
Mhm.
Okay? This public-private partnership, what's unique about it is we're allowing companies to use some of the county assets, meaning our buildings, our towers, our light poles, our library buildings, et cetera. We formed an agreement with the with the city of Los Angeles to share their assets as well for those projects in the city of LA, and with the Los Angeles County Office of Education, which represents 80 school districts, to use assets to accelerate the build out of these community wireless networks. And then there's a study that's taking place to look at fiber to the homes, which is the ultimate desire. The interesting thing is the federal government has identified $64 billion to address digital equity throughout the nation. And we want to make sure we get our share. So we are prepared to have really built out systems so we can do this and do it quickly. Um, we're in a position where we can literally start connecting thousands of households as early as the fall of this year.
Nice.
So
That's
we're
great.
talking, when we say light up households, we're talking tens of thousands.
Mhm.
Okay. And so it would be in those areas where 20% or more of the households, that's the primary target areas where they really are impacted by not having access. Once they have the access, we surround them with digital literacy, adoption tools, everything else they need to be successful and really understand it. We also are looking at digital navigators, and digital navigators are, these are used in different places, but these are individuals hired from the community to assist people in the community with getting connected, with understanding if they need help. And so, it's a holistic approach to really closing, the digital gap that exists currently.
Right. And what impact do you personally think that this is going to have on the next generation? Right. And I know that, for when I was coming up and I was in high school and college and stuff like that, I knew that the internet was important even then. Right. But, and I know that, you, you look pretty young, right? So I don't want to say your generation, but I mean, you look pretty young. We're probably not too far off, but I know that even in your generation, things were a little bit different, right? So when you think about throughout the course of history and how we become more technologically advanced, by everyone having access, or at least the majority of the population having access to the internet, what impact do you think that that's going to play on the future generations?
Well, I think it's definitely a social economic issue, and that's what the digital divide is all about. It's about the economic, educational, and social inequalities that exist between those who have access to computers and internet and those who don't.
Mhm.
So when we talk about economic, just think of business. In Los Angeles County, during COVID, more businesses, small businesses closed than anywhere else in the nation. Over 15,000 businesses closed, and many are still vulnerable, particularly in underserved communities. How do you transition, especially during COVID when they had a lot of restrictions, if you don't go to the internet? What happened? A lot of people started buying stuff online.
Right.
Well, when a small business leaves a lot of underserved communities, there's nobody to come in and replace it. So now the people in the community have to go further to get the services and resources they need. And then the dollars they spend are recycling in other places as opposed to the community they live in. So technology is empowering from an economic sense, but it's also empowering from, an awareness. I give you an example. When I grew up, um, we would everybody had a jalopy, right? So you had whatever car you could get, and so you're always tinkering with it, fixing things. So you'd ask somebody, "Hey, can I?" And you spend a lot of time and money trying to figure it out.
Mhm.
For those of us who have the internet, when we have a problem, what's the first thing we do?
Go on YouTube.
We go to YouTube, and in 5 minutes, we got all the answers. Or if we're going someplace, we go and we look and see where we're going, or if we shop, or we want to compare for the best deals.
Right.
These are things that will change the mindset of how people go about their daily lives, and it's very important. When we talk about employment opportunities and access to services, one of the biggest challenges is telehealth. People need medical help. In
Right.
many of these same communities, we have data that shows there are also communities that have the least amount of health insurance, many health problems and ailments. And during COVID, it became extremely difficult to go see your doctor, but you can do telehealth. I've
Mhm.
talked to the healthcare industry. Many of them created portals, online portals to help their patients and their clients. But unfortunately, those that are in communities that can't afford the internet don't get that service. I've talked to the court systems. Do you know you can do a lot of your court and legal transactions online? You can go to traffic school online. You can
Yeah.
have your hearings. People that don't have the internet have to, if they have a job, they have to leave their job, potentially lose pay, spend time and money going down to a courthouse that others can do in the comfort of their own homes. So it's those types of things that we oftentimes quality of life things that we take for granted that people can't do every day.
Right.
And that's important. And it's also important to building, again, that generational knowledge and that generational opportunities for generational wealth.
Right. Right. And I'll even take it, one step further, and you can let me know if you agree or disagree. But when you think about the access to the internet, and you think about how you have certain individuals who may not have the ability to go to school because maybe they're helping out their family, or or relatives, or something like that, or they just for whatever reason maybe they're in an area where they can't get there, and you think about the access to what they can learn from home, right? Because in the past, you know, it's my personal opinion that when you went to some of the Ivy League schools and some of the top schools in the nation, part of what you were paying for was not only the education, but you were paying for the relationships and the information itself. And when you have search engines like Google, and you have um, websites like YouTube and stuff like that, now more people have access to that level of information. And some of the things that they're not teaching is in school, or at least when I was in school, they weren't teaching much about financial wellness, the importance of having credit, how to start companies or build companies and start LLCs, the importance of starting LLCs and corporations and stuff like that. Like, a lot of that information, it existed, but they were not necessarily teaching it in college. And now with the internet, you can have someone who's working from home now start a business from home, right? And I'll give you an example. I was talking to a business owner who's good at designing digital content, and they were able to secure a contract with an organization, and part of the deliverable in which they were paid for was a PowerPoint, and the organization paid $1,000 or close to $1,000 for the PowerPoint, right? Not,
Mm-hmm.
that's just that part, the presentation part of it. But, that's in addition to all the other services that digital content provider was providing, right? So when you think about the access to the internet, and you think about the ability for people to just be able to learn from home, to be able to build businesses from home, and for them to know their value in society in terms of what they can charge, is really life-changing money. And it can really change the course of a person's life by just taking some hours, some spare hours, and really educating yourself on a particular field that you're interested in, and then figuring out how I can monetize that and deliver that to other to society, right? So, I mean, in my opinion, this is. I mean, I can't say enough good things about what you or LA County are doing to bridge this gap. You
Well,
know,
and to take it even further, let's say you are an entrepreneur. Where do you go? How do you start a website? You may end up spending a lot of money because lack of knowledge. And I can tell you, we have those services too, where we help them. We do an assessment. They get a private consultation, like what they need to do to digital market and create that foot traffic. But I give an example of why it's important. In the county of LA, we move about $9 billion in business to vendors and contracts and purchasing. Small businesses alone, last fiscal year, we spent as a county about $915 million on
wow.
small businesses. The first 3 quarters of the current fiscal year, we've already spent about $850 million. There are many small businesses that may not realize that, hey, the county will use your services, and we're constantly building things to make it more, better for them so they can be competitive. But a lot of small business may think there's not an opportunity there. But guess what? In order to register with us, you have to go online.
Right.
So if you're a small business and you have a great service, but you're not tapped in to the digital space, there may be many of opportunities you're missing out on. And like I said at the beginning, I grew up in a family business. My dad is deceased, but had he been alive, I know he want to hear anything about this internet stuff, right?
You're right.
Right? He just wouldn't. And so helping small businesses understand, like, yeah, you're busy, but there are tools and resources. Where are your customers coming from? Can your customers purchase your product online? Can you predict? Can you manage your hours, using technology, or how people spread the word? Some of the best places we like to go and eat in communities don't have a website. Now, they
Right.
may be on Yelp or whatever, but the word of mouth, we know about them. But imagine if they had an internet presence and how that may attract customers and others from outside their area and create that sustainability, and then build and grow your business from there, or provide your services and products over the internet online. I mean, there's so many ways to expand. You may have heard recently that one of the major companies that own malls or shopping centers is getting out of the business. It's more lucrative and less overhead to do it online. I mean, and you've seen a lot of businesses, have transitioned to that, and some that don't. And here's the thing: some businesses, that's all that's all that family has. And what if they have children or nieces and nephews that they wanted to pass it on to? What we're saying is, hey, let this technology help you get there, and retain what you built and what you worked hard, to develop. And so there's a lot of that too. So I would just say, in general, the internet, and the reason why we say delete the divide is this: we always talk about bridging the digital divide, but when you have to build a bridge, you have to plan, you have to get the materials, you have to construct it, you have to convince people to go and cross the bridge, and people fall off the bridge or they end up under the bridge. You have to maintain the bridge. And it also says there's a difference in sides. There's one side versus the other. What we're saying is delete all that. Because in a lot of the communities you'll see, in the more affluent neighborhoods that surround it, they already have it, which means it already exists. Why do we need to bridge anything? Just make it available, accessible, and help people, empower them to use it. And I think, it's beyond time to do that. So that's what delete the divide is about. It's about bridging deleting the divide between public and private sector, deleting the divide between those who have and those who don't, deleting the divide between those who have knowledge and those who don't. Like, there's no reason for that.
Right.
When you look at how much, particularly in Los Angeles County, with how much we have, how many resources that are available, people may not realize your help is just within a mile away, and with the technology, it's in your own home. There's nothing to bridge. If I can provide you with that knowledge and information, as you were describing, in your own home, in the palm of your hand, it's possible. There's nothing to build. We just have to make it accessible.
Right. And before we go, there's also websites out there, for individuals who may not be familiar with certain expertise, that you can pay someone to do it for you, right? And I use myself for example. I designed my own website initially, but it was decent. I gave it a good effort, and it worked. But I was able to go on a website, and actually I'm in the process of paying someone a reasonable price, right? A couple of $100s to really revamp my website, and make it more visually appealing, right? And accessible, right? And also you want your website to be able to benefit from the search engine optimization. And these are all things that, everyone may not know a lot about, but you don't have to be a jack of all trades anymore. You can just go ahead and say, you know what, I know a lot about this. Let me go ahead and pay someone a reasonable amount to build my website for me. Let me pay someone to help out with the search engine optimization, and then go from there and focus on what you know. And now that, because we have the internet and other organizations and stuff like that, it's a lot more accessible to be able to delete, those gaps. So, I mean, again, thank you. I appreciate your time. I appreciate what you're doing. I think it's amazing. But before I let you go, as a professional, we usually like to ask a question, just to see, what you would do with it, because a lot of people inherit, money and stuff like that, and they don't know what to do. So one of the questions that we like to ask is, if you were to inherit anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000, what would you do with it today?
As I get older, the things I would do years ago, I'm a little different now.
Mm-hmm.
But I really believe in return on investment. It's that discipline of needs versus wants. And how do you help the money to last, and to provide and help not only your family situation first, but then how can it help others? Because here's the thing: if you are wealthy and no one around you that you care about and you trust is there with you, it's just not. There's no value in that. So for me, it's really just understanding how to make the money work for you, because you only need so much to live on.
Right.
Right? You only need so much. I mean, if you have expensive tastes, well, maybe that's different. But how much, when you really think about how much you need to spend on transportation, food, and housing, what else is there? And so, how do you make money, enough money to make sure you have your needs met? But then, how do you turn it over? And to me, part of it is looking at helping others to get there. And it's very important. You can invest in different things, but I think ensuring that whatever investments you make, that there is a return on it, because we're born into this world with nothing,
Mm-hmm.
and money is just paper. I mean, it can come and go. But if you don't put it to good use, and there's a lot of parables and things about that, but I really believe when you get it, understand, and it should be investments in things that you feel confident you can sleep at night.
Mm-hmm.
And I also would say this: no matter what, don't be tempted to go into things that are on the other side of the law.
Right.
I witnessed a lot of that. I grew
Right.
up in the '80s, so I witnessed a lot of people get things and didn't turn out quite so well for them. So,
Well, I'm sorry, and I know I caught you off guard with the question, and don't worry, I'm gonna catch all my guests, but I can't let you off the hook that easy, right? And the reason why I'm and we this isn't to necessarily hold you to what you're saying, but I was having a conversation with a friend, and they were in the process of inheriting some money, and they were afraid, and they was like, I really just don't know what to do with it, right? Because a part of them wants to just sit it in the bank, then a part of them wants to invest it, but they really don't know what to invest it in. And when you don't have those resources and those networks around you, it's easy to blow it, right? Because if you just sit it in the bank and you say, hey, that's a nice watch, maybe I'll buy that, or maybe I'll go buy a pair of shoes, and over time, and don't let other family members find out that you have it. And then you start getting those random phone calls and stuff like that. So to circle back around with you, if you had to choose tonight, what are maybe one or two things that you would at least consider?
well, I still have an entrepreneurial spirit in me, but I don't. I'm at the. When you grow up, I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna share something with you. There was a time in my life where I fell on really hard times, and I had less than $5 to my name. And I know, and I had less than $5 because I was part of a credit union through the university, and they sent me a letter and said, please deposit, like, I don't know, 53 cents so that your minimum balance is $5.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right.
And that was a wake up call for me. And step by step, within 4 years, I'd gotten a job, saved my money. In 4 years, I put a down payment on my house.
Nice.
And I also paid for my own wedding and honeymoon. And so I had less than $5 to my name. And in 4 years, I was able to achieve that. And that's because of the discipline. So I'm not one to take money lightly.
Mm-hmm.
I have an appreciation for it.
Absolutely.
But I've learned over the years is, look, I did things like put savings aside for my kids and their college education because I had to pay my way through it. And when you see the compounding interest on that, if you're in a, you know, in one of those saving programs to the state and the tax benefits from it, it went a long way. And I was able to pay, you know, my daughter just graduated from college this month, actually.
Congratulations.
You know, and it's thank you, and it's because of those investments. So I'm a big believer in investments, but most of them, I live my life. You know, is for others at this point. So if I had it tonight, chances are I'd probably be scheming on how to create a new. You know, I like to get on the grill, so I might think about it, somebody doing that. But for me, I'd probably you know, look at where it can gain the most interest, where it can returns, but then use those returns to, you know, consider starting another, you know, entrepreneur venture would be my desire. But I am a lot older than I look, so I'm very realistic on what the type of energy it takes to do a lot of things. And remember, I've come in contact with a lot of people. I know people at a lot of different income levels, from billionaires to millionaires to people that don't have anything. And
Right.
so I do know money is only part of the story. It's about the relationships you have, surrounding yourself with people that you care about. And I wouldn't want to let money get in the way of you know, ripping apart those types of relationships. Those are really important to me at this point in my life.
Okay. Thank you.
I wouldn't give it to you, though. I tell you that. You
No,
take it, and you wouldn't even treat me to a steak dinner. You just
you know, thank you. Thank you. This was a pleasure. Thank you for sharing your time with us tonight. I'm looking forward to, you know, more accomplishments that you will be working on and the LA County will be working on. And, you know, I look forward to keeping in contact with you. If there's ever anything that, you know, we can do for you, please let us know.
no, I appreciate it, and it's great, you know, having this opportunity to talk to you and spend a little time with you, and let's keep it going.
Okay, cool.
So I like to encourage anyone who's interested in being digital equity or being connected to contact deletethedivide.org. Deletethedivide.org offers a lot of different services, whether you're youth, young adult, or small business. Anything that you need, if it has to do with getting access to computers, reducing the cost of your internet service, or the purchase of a computer or device, if you need assistance with a small business, you know, having websites being established, expanding your reach. We have a number of services.
For more info about what we do, please visit dbinvestmentsco.com. We can be contacted at info@dbinvestmentsco.com. Once again, that's info@dbinvestmentsco.com. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of The Business Behind the Success. Our goal is to have informative conversations and share personal perspective with individuals who are successful in their field of expertise in hopes that it will lead to more favorable outcomes for anyone seeking guidance. If you support the content, please hit subscribe.